Okay, so go ahead, continue.
Okay. Um, so now we're embracing the Zoom method in order to have a presentation and at the same time maintain a healthy atmosphere. That's our goal, is to keep everyone healthy so that we can all make it to our 160th year. And now Stephen has a zoo for you. Yay! Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, so I am going to share my screen. And with the magic of Zoom, you should all be seeing my first slide. Just give me a thumbs up if you see it. Okay, good. I got enough thumbs up to see that I see it. I am recording. Again, I told you that closed caption is available at the bottom of your screen or somewhere in the screen. There should be a little CC box. So if you want to follow along, if you're having troubles hearing it, you can read the captions. Or if you find it annoying, you can turn it off. And it's the magic of computers doing the transcription. So I'm sure I'll say some words that it'll transcribe incorrectly, and that'll all give us a little chuckle. So tonight, I'm going to take you through a stroll through the zoo, but I'm actually going to take you through 4 zoos. I like taking pictures. I like taking pictures at the zoo, and I've been to 4 zoos in the last few years. The Philly Zoo was the first one we'll go through. Obviously, that's the closest one. It's over in Girard Avenue. I'm sure many of you have been to that one. Pro tip here, if you're going to go, get a membership. If you go twice in 1 year, the membership's paid for itself, especially if you drive, because parking is free. And you get a membership, you bring a friend, you park, do it twice. It's cheaper to get a membership. Cape May Zoo is the next farthest one. That's almost all the way to Cape May, New Jersey. It's actually in Cape May Courthouse. It's in Cape May County, about 11 miles short of the end of the Garden State Parkway. Roger Williams Zoo, bonus points if anybody actually knows where it is. It's in Providence, Rhode Island, which was founded by Roger Williams in the 1600s. Obviously, I never met him. But the Roger Williams Zoo is a beautiful zoo also. And Copenhagen Zoo, I just had the pleasure of, the last 2 weeks ago, I was in Copenhagen. My daughter is a PhD doing a postdoc in Copenhagen, and we went to visit her. And she took us, one of the places she took us to was the Copenhagen Zoo, which was probably the fanciest zoo of them all. So let's get started. Okay, so I have some suggestions when you take pictures at the zoo. First of all, people say Nikon, Sony, Canon, it doesn't matter. Here's the things that will matter. Plan on bringing a long zoom. I have an 80 to 400. I'm usually out towards the 400 for a lot of animals. Do not need wide much, but zoos have the thing about keeping you and the animals separate. Protects the animals more than us, I think. But needless to say, how they keep us separate, I'll be talking about that a little bit. But I'm often out, even at 400, and then I plan on cropping when I get back because it's very hard to fill the frame. You just can't get close enough because the animals don't always cooperate. The other thing is, especially when you go into the animal houses, you know, it could be the small mammal house or the amphibian house in Philadelphia, and all the other zoos have these same kind of things. When you go inside, the lights are not very bright. The animals do not really want to be in the bright light. So plan on shooting at a high ISO. I have Topaz denoise when I need it, which will help clean up the noise at the higher ISOs. And the last piece of advice I have, regardless of your camera, is patience. You're going to be standing there for a long time waiting for the animal to get into a pose that you like. I'll easily take, in a single session, you know, 400 or 500 pictures and be happy if I can get 50 that I want to show people. So you're going to take a lot of pictures, you're going to miss a lot, and you got to do a lot to take. And like, for example, other than the Copenhagen Zoo, all the pictures of the zoos that I'll show you, the other ones, are from multiple trips. I didn't keep track of which trip was which, but it's none of the, except for Copenhagen, none of the zoos that you're seeing my pictures from came from a single visit. Took multiple visits. Some days, some animals are better than others. That's one thing I like about the zoo. If you go to the Philadelphia Museum of Art twice in a week, all the paintings are the same. They're all in the same place. You go to the zoo 2 times in a week, you won't necessarily see the same animals, and each of the animals you see will have a different activity level, and they'll actually be either easier or harder to photograph depending on how close it was to feeding time, how hot it is, a lot of factors. Where at an art museum, the painting is just there always. That doesn't mean it's not worth going back multiple times, but they're not going to change. So the first zoo we're going to walk through or stroll through is the Philadelphia Zoo. And one of the things I always remember when I'm walking through the zoo is there's often more than just the animals to take pictures of. For example, when you first walk into the Philadelphia Zoo, this is called the Impala Fountain. And if you look carefully at the picture, you'll see that those animals in there are impalas, which are horned animals, sort of like a deer or something. So it's fun to take pictures of things other than the animals. One time I was there and I like flower pictures too, and they had the most amazing flowers. I was just impressed with the pictures and quality of the flowers that I could actually get while visiting the zoo. So I got this flower picture and this one, both came from one visit at the zoo. So as you're visiting the zoo, remember there's more than just animals. Another thing that's fun to do, which I didn't do a lot of, but sometimes it's fun to take pictures of other people at the zoo. A funny story, I'm at the Philadelphia Zoo, I'm taking pictures and the little kid comes running up to me and says, "Can you take my picture? Can you take my picture?" And I said, "Oh, what am I gonna do?" So I said to his mother, I says, "Can I take his picture? Is it already? He wants his picture." She says, "Sure, take his picture." I took his picture. It was cute. No one I really wanted to show, but it was a cute picture. Okay, so now we're going to get to the animals. And I do not know the names of all the animals. This was in the small mammal house in Philadelphia. And one of the things I like to do is get the eye of the animal or the animals looking at me. I try not to get the backside of the animals, which is a lot easier to get. It's harder to get the animals facing you because oftentimes they don't want to see you. So they turn around and turn their back to you. So, and this I think is a golden terrapin. And one of the things I noticed is I think all 4 zoos I went to had this animal on display. So some zoos will have some animals that others don't. So there are some animals that's common to see in a lot of zoos, some animals that we only see in a few zoos. I look at this animal and I'm sitting there going like, I think I know where Dr. Seuss got some of his ideas. I just look at these animals and there was no question in my mind as I'm looking at these and some of the other animals. And then I think about what I read in Dr. Seuss and some of the funny animals he would draw and says, he was making fun of the animals he saw at the zoo. And you try to get them with some emotion and some reactions. So, and you got to be quick because these animals don't pose, they move, and you got to try to catch them when they're in that position. And if you're lucky, you might have a whole second or two to catch them before they move on to whatever they're doing next. This one's kind of fun. This is a mother and baby. Obviously you can see the baby, but that black hair is the back of a mother, the monkey. This picture actually, I won 3rd place in a recent contest in South Jersey. It was a senior art contest held somewhere in South Jersey. It was virtual. And this picture won third place. So I always felt like that. See no evil, hear no evil, do no evil when I saw the three of them. And here's another one of them. I mean, and I definitely feel like see no, except for they're not covering their eyes, mouth, and ears. But there's, so as you're taking the pictures, sometimes you think of things, you know, in other parts of life. This one I love the face of. It's just it's a very white face on a very dark animal. And I know Copenhagen had this animal. I'm trying to think if Roger Williams may have, but this is an animal I've seen at multiple zoos. And like just trying to get the animals to and catch them in poses that they're doing something, that they're I feel like he's counting on his fingers. Like, I'll give you this long before I'm moving out of here. You don't know what they're thinking, but you make stuff up. The Philly Zoo is the only one that I saw gorillas at. You see a lot of primates, but gorillas aren't common. Philly is one of the zoos that does have primates. And you look at the primate and they just seem so Planet of the Apes, you know, when so approachable. I mean, they're not. I wouldn't dare go near. So I went to the zoo one year and I was there and I learned that the largest gorilla is 430 pounds. And I had a coworker who claimed to be 6'8" and 480 pounds. And I realized he was bigger than the gorillas. Made me realize how overweight he was. So oftentimes the gorillas will sit there and pose. And I just like looking at their faces. I just feel like they're thinking, you know, there's something going on there. Now, one of the things you learn about gorillas is they're often called silverbacks. So this gorilla is called silverback. And if you look at the back of it, you'll notice the hair is sort of silver. Now, silverback is not a breed. If you look at some of us older men and you look, you see we have gray hair. I had black hair when I was a child. This gorilla started out, was born with black hair, and it's as it got older, it got gray hair too. And so when you hear a gorilla being called a silverback, it just means it's an old gorilla and it got gray hair. Took me a while to find that out, you know, multiple trips before, you know, you meet a docent who actually knows what they're talking about and explains that to you. Another, oh, here's another gorilla picture. And they're just so expressive. They're also slobs. If you look at his mouth, you'll actually see, it's not a spotch on the picture. It's when he eats, he's not careful and he doesn't wipe his mouth and get all the food off his face. So that's actually food on his face and he doesn't care. Okay, this is a fun animal, the orangutans. And I have multiple pictures of orangutans, but I didn't include in this set. But one of the things that's fun about the orangutans is oftentimes when they're hanging outside, they're given a blanket and they'll put the blanket over the head like a hood. They'll cover themselves with the blanket. They'll take it off. They'll flap it around. They definitely have fun playing with their blanket. And again, I just like the faces on these animals. I mean, it looks like he's smiling and just laughing at us and having fun. Okay, this is an animal that's called a red panda. Common to see at zoos, very hard to photograph. Very hard to photograph a red panda. They either hide or one of the things I mentioned is every zoo has ways of keeping the animal away from you. It could be a glass wall, it could be a mesh wall, it could be a moat. There's lots of different ways they use. And one of the things the panda, and they also build environments inside for the animal to feel comfortable. So oftentimes it's very common for an animal to figure out, I don't know if they're actually doing it on purpose, but as a photographer, you want to yell, get over, line up, smile. They don't listen. So they'll often hide behind the enclosure, or pandas are notorious for pacing when they're moving and just trying to figure out the movement and catch it when it's in the right position to get it. And oftentimes you're blasting a bunch of pictures and hoping one will come out. Sometimes you get it. So here's another picture of the red panda up close. And again, when I say you're looking at this up close, figure that the lens is probably at 400 millimeters, which means like 8 times enlargement. It is not. You're not close enough to touch these things, nor do I want to be. Another common animal you'll see at zoos and aquariums, this is also one that's used by zoos and aquariums, are otters. And this is probably a sea otter. This is in the Philadelphia Zoo. He's eating a fish. There's 2 kinds of otters. Well, probably more than 2, but main classes are sea otters, which are bigger, and river otters, which are smaller. So this is a sea otter, and there he's eating the same fish. But these are really hard because they move fast, and then they dive under the water. And of course, in Philadelphia Zoo, the tank is right up against the glass, except for you have 2 problems. The glass is dirty, and there's a gazillion kids hanging in front of the glass, putting their face right up to it. So it's often difficult. And then these little otters move very quick. And so you think you get it in focus, and by the time you think you're ready to click, it's under the water and swimming away from you. So they're not the easiest to catch. But occasionally you can get 2 together, looking at each other. So another fun thing to take at zoos, they usually have birds. So don't ask me why these 2 birds, they actually share a cage. These are just they were different ends. They're in this small mammal house at the Philadelphia Zoo, and as last I knew, birds were not mammals, but I guess they had room, so they put them at the end. But they're very colorful and they're fun to look at. So I think these birds are behind a mesh and they can fly around. So one of the things you learn is that if you have to shoot through a mesh fence, a shallow depth of field will make the fence go away because it won't be in focus. It'll just sort of fuzzy the picture a little bit, but you can do fairly well. And with post-processing, you just sharpen them up. These are macaws. There was nothing in between them. I don't know if they fly a lot, but they were very easy and fun to take pictures of. And I got a whole slew of pictures. I got some with them back to back and front and back. I'm not going to show you all of them. We'd be here all night if I showed you all my zoo pictures. But so these are 2 macaws, and they're just colorful. But I had to stand there for about 10 minutes to get a bunch of shots because a good part of the time they had their back to me. And I like to try to get a picture with at least the animal's eye in it. Now, you all probably recognize this bird. It's an American eagle, a bald eagle, rather, I should say, American symbol, the bald eagle, which if the Philadelphia and Ben Franklin had a way, our American bird would have been a turkey, but he lost that battle, so it's a bald eagle. Now, one thing about, so the 3 American zoos, the Philadelphia, Roger Williams, and the Cape May Zoo all have bald eagles. All the bald eagles they have are injured to the point where they cannot be released to the wild. So there's something wrong with the bird that requires them, if they're going to stay alive, to remain in captivity. they're not healthy enough to be released to the wild, because you're not allowed to keep a healthy bald eagle in a zoo or anywhere. They're considered endangered species. And here's a close-up of the bald eagle. And again, close up, I'm not that close. I'm actually fairly far away with a zoom lens shooting through a mesh fence. But again, the shallow depth of field, you can make the fence go away. Now, my favorite kind of animal to shoot at the Philadelphia Zoo, and I'll probably spend the most time with, are the big cats. So obviously a tiger, and there's a lot of tigers. So there's a tiger just looking at me. There's a tiger walking, and they'll pace. And if you stay there long enough, you'll actually see they pace a pattern. And you can actually tell, one, the patterns wore out on the ground. So there's like, grass growing except for the path they go. And they'll tend to loop around and walk around in a pattern. And again, sometimes you can get two together. And I just like the way I got both of them, because oftentimes when the two together, you don't get them both looking at you. So here's a male lion. And then there's the male lion with the female lion. Now, remember, I told you at the Philadelphia Zoo, they use glass. Philadelphia is one of the better ones for using glass. It's not perfect. It's like shooting through a mesh fence because it's dirty, so you have to use a shallow depth of field. But you can see that other than that piece of glass, that glass weren't there. I would say there would be 2 feet between the lion and the kids. Well, if there was glass wasn't there, there'd be 2 feet before the lion ate the kids. So you can get fairly close. And if you look at the bottom right corner, you'll actually see a lion sleeping. Unfortunately, when they're lying that close to the window, it's really hard to take their picture because they're just too close. So that's the Philadelphia Zoo. We're now ready to switch to put on your seatbelts. We're taking a ride. We are going to go to the Copenhagen, I mean, not the Cape May Zoo, again, Cape May County, Cape May Courthouse, New Jersey. It's a little bit of a ride from Philadelphia. However, this zoo has free parking and free admission. My wife and I are sitting there going like, who pays for it? We don't know. All the zoos you're going to see are members of the worldwide zoo accreditation. So they're all accredited official formal zoos, which means that they have to have certain levels of care for the animals. So it's not cheap. So someone is paying for this, and I don't know who, but somebody does. So that's on the entrance to the Cape May Zoo. And so when you first walk in there, you see some animals that you say, this isn't that uncommon. This is obviously a bovine. I'm guessing, looking at the bottom of it, it's a male, so it's probably a steer. Because if it was a female, there would be an utter disaster that something's missing. That was supposed to be a joke. But anyway, it's kind of fun getting close to the cow, even though cows are not uncommon even in this area. They also have goats, and this goat, I don't know what it is about goats, but they love climbing on things. And this is a barrel, and the goat's just standing on the barrel, just there and there. And there's another goat. Again, I got him looking at me. And of course, the next one, for some of you, may have been dinner. There's a potbelly pig. And just sort of hanging there. Now, those animals were pretty stationary. They were easy to get. They also were behind fences that were only 4 feet high, and I'm taller than that. So shooting up over the fence and at them was very easy. So now we get to one of my favorite animals at the zoo. And again, this is a cat, lion. And you can see there's a fence, and the fence is so close, there's no way you can blur it out. I mean, I could have probably spent 3 hours in Photoshop and try to clone that fence out. I'm not that patient. But the lion was just looking at us like, like, yeah. I mean, you could just see that, you could feel like there were thoughts, and the lion was not exactly happy with us. But there he was, just staring at us. And there's the lion in the same enclosure was the male. And you stand there and you take pictures and take pictures, but you have to wait. Remember, I said patience is one of the key things you got to worry about. So we waited long enough, and sure enough, I think he was yawning because there was no food nearby, but you can get them with their mouth open. And I'm glad at that point the fence was between us and I wasn't actually in there with him. Be a little scary. This is a snow leopard. Interesting thing about snow leopards is that snow leopards are basically going extinct. I believe that the largest population of snow leopards are the ones that live in zoos. Otherwise, they would be totally extinct. Now, remember at the beginning of the, like on our second or third slide, I said, here's an animal you see at almost every zoo. Well, here's the Cape May one at this zoo. Just sort of looking at us. This animal, which I actually saw at the, I actually went to the Copenhagen Zoo 3 weeks ago and the Cape May Zoo last week, and then like 3 years ago and 4 years ago. So Copenhagen I've only been to once. Cape May I've been to 3 or 4 times. But there's something about this animal with that long mustache. Just seems just so fun to look at. And there's a monkey, primate. And what makes this picture sort of amazing is I have him and he looks nice, but he was in that position probably for half a second. I think I had the camera on, rapid fire, and was catching a whole string of them, trying to get one that I liked, because he went from one end of the rope to the other longer than I'm showing you this slide. And again, these 3 monkeys, or I should say primates, I don't know if they're whatever they are, primates, were just moving around really fast. And I'll point it out because I don't normally move, but if you look towards the bottom middle of the animals, you'll see sort of a whitish line. That's actually the fence closest to me, part of the fence that I wasn't able to blur out and get rid of. Because they are behind a fence. But again, shallow depth of field blurred most of it out, but the sun was hitting it in a way for that one piece that it just made it too much to blur out. Who wants to know what kind of great horned owl this is? So we're looking at it, and the picture actually is better than what it was like in real life. In the description, it said, be sure to notice the animal has orange eyes. And my wife and I are looking at it without the camera. And she's sitting there like, yeah, it's really dark in there. I can't see. I can barely see the eyes, never make out they're orange. But again, the camera did the auto, balancing and all that stuff. And I was able to get the eyes. So one thing they have running wild at the Cape May Zoo are peacocks. And this is unusual in a peacock in that it has white feathers. It's not common, but they have them. I couldn't find them for this talk, but I was actually at the Cape May Zoo once when all the peacocks, the males were strutting and they had their full feathers open. And it was so easy to catch them, and they were fanning themselves because the feathers on a peacock are for mating, and they open them wide up to try to show off to the peahens that they're the one they want to mate with. So unlike humans where the women dress up and the men make decisions, and most of the animal kingdom, the men dress up and the women choose which ones they're going to mate with. As I said, pretty much every zoo in America, Copenhagen didn't care, but America does, has a bald eagle. And this is the one I got there. And again, this bald eagle cannot live in the wild for, probably has a broken wing. Most of the time it's a broken wing. Now, one thing is Philadelphia, Cape May, Roger Williams, and Copenhagen all had giraffes. They're a common animal, and I've seen it both at multiple zoos, but this is at Cape May. They'll often have meet the giraffes, and they have people feeding the giraffes, and they'll hold up branches with leaves, and the giraffes will eat that. Now, Cape May has one of the largest enclosures I saw for giraffes. I feel safe telling you this story. I didn't put the pictures in here, but we're watching and we're there, and there were a couple of giraffes, and they were at the very far end of the enclosure. So far away, you could tell they were giraffes, but you couldn't see much about them. But you notice that one of them seemed to want to be climbing on the other one. So I had my zoom lens out, 400 millimeter. I took pictures. I was using a 50 megapixel camera. I took it home, I cropped it. Well, let's just say if there was a porn magazine for giraffes, I had the pictures for it. You could actually see various parts of anatomy, which you normally don't see in use in the two giraffes. And the male was trying and the female kept walking away. It was hysterical. And at the Cape May Zoo, again, common for zoos, they have alligators, but theirs was outside, which made it easy to take a picture of the alligator. So there we have an alligator at the Cape May Zoo. So now let's take a long ride. We're going to go about 5 hours in the car, and we're going to go to Providence, Rhode Island, which has the Roger Williams Zoo. And many of you are going to say, why would he choose the Roger Williams Zoo in Providence? Well, it turns out both my wife and I grew up in Rhode Island, and the Roger Williams Zoo, when my wife was growing up, was about a 2-mile walk from her house to the zoo. And so we'd go up there, and I try to run away from the family, and I had a zoo membership, so it got me in half price. So I would go to the zoo while my wife was talking and visiting with her mother. So I went a few times. Again, I remember when you go to a zoo, remember there's more than just the animals to take pictures of. So this is one of the enclosures, and I just like the fact there was a waterfall there, and I just thought it made a very pretty picture. So common at all the zoos are zebras. I didn't want to show zebras everywhere because, you know, how many zebras can you look at? But so these are zebras at the Roger Williams Zoo. And I love looking at them and trying to get multiple together because then the patterns match. And I'm always trying to figure out, is a zebra a white animal with black stripes or a black animal with white stripes? And I haven't decided. I sort of look at the bottom, and I think the bottom is white. So I'm thinking it might be a white animal with black stripes, but I'm not sure. I don't know how, but it's amazing. And the other thing is you look at the body of the animal, and the stripes go one way, but then you look at the legs and the stripes go down the legs. So it's just fascinating how the stripes all work. So there's an animal, a horse in its striped pajamas. I think that's what they call them. So the zebra is a member of the horse family, but it's a nasty animal. And unlike the horses we often see, cowboys and all that, which are domesticated, zebras were not able to be domesticated. They're just too nasty an animal. I mean, they're fine in the zoo because you're behind the enclosure, but you can't really domesticate a zebra like you can a horse. So this is our first zoo out of the 3. We're in our 3rd zoo, and this is the first one that has elephants. The Providence or Roger Williams Zoo has 3 elephants. The rules for being an accredited zoo has rules on what you can have for elephants. The requirement is you have to have at least 3 elephants because elephants are social animals, and it has to have so much area per animal. So for each animal, you have to have a certain amount of size. When I was first moved to Philadelphia about 30 some years ago, Philadelphia had zoos, but then the accreditation rules changed on what you're allowed to do with elephants, and they didn't have enough space. Their space was too small, so they had to get rid of their elephants. So Philadelphia no longer has elephants anymore. So elephants, again, are social, and they live in this case, there's 3 of them, but here's 2 of them together, and they're very friendly. They're also very willing to work with humans, but the accreditation organization has ruled that there should be minimum contact between elephants and humans for the elephant's sake. So you're finding them trying to wean off, and the elephants don't want it. The elephants want to be friendly, and the humans are saying, no, we're not allowed to anymore. So they're moving towards less human contact with the elephants. And I told you, I try to get pictures with faces and eyes. Sometimes the animals will not cooperate. Sometimes you just get what you get. So I got the back end of 3 elephants. And I will not make any political jokes here. Giraffes are common, as I told you, at zoos. I love the giraffes. And what makes a difference between the giraffes that want, the giraffes are giraffes, but taking as a photographer, what makes a difference is what is the background and how close can you get? Because with a giraffe, if you want to get the whole animal, you're getting a fairly big picture because giraffes are fairly tall. Little trivia fact, the tongue of a giraffe is about 11 inches long. And the other thing is the giraffe to drink has to put his head down, then picks his head up. There's special valves in his neck to keep the blood from leaving its brain when it puts his head up quickly. Giraffes also tend to sleep standing up because it's a lot of work to go from sitting down to standing up. So they tend to sleep standing up. So if a predator were to come attack them, which there aren't many of predators, they're already in an upright position so they can start running. So this picture just happened, and I took it, and when I took it home, I was sitting like, I think I got a 2-headed giraffe. Now, in truth, there's actually 2 giraffes, and one's just behind the other, and it's just how they're positioned, but certainly looks like a 2-headed giraffe to me. Again, remember I talked about Dr. Seuss and where did he get his ideas for some of his animals? Just amazing, the frou-frou, what do you call it? Frou-frou on the animals. I'm just looking at comments I'm missing. I haven't been paying attention. So give me 1 second to catch up on the comments to make sure I'm not missing anybody's things that I need to address. Okay, so thank you. Someone asked what camera I use. I'm a Nikon shooter. Sometimes the most recently I've been using a D80 850, which is 50 megapixels. I've used a 750. I've used a 7100. I've used lots of different cameras there. So here's the bald eagle at the Providence or Roger Williams Zoo. Now this is the easiest bald eagle to capture because it looks beautiful. There's no enclosure between you and the animal. The animal is totally captured. They put him on his perch. He's stuck. The animal does not really have wings. Those are prosthetics. Those are fake wings. They're like, a prosthetic leg. Those are prosthetic wings. So the animal can't fly, can't even move, can't jump from the perch. It's stationary. It's the easiest bald eagle you can take pictures of. And it turns around and it's easy to pose. Australia is represented. And most zoos will have kangaroos. So there's my kangaroo. So there's a camel. Some zoos have one hump camel, some have two, some have both. And I don't have a picture here, but there's one picture I have, and it doesn't look like the teeth are attached to the mouth. They just move around and the lips move around in a way that makes you wonder if the face and the teeth are attached to each other. They're just so weird the way they move. Again, they don't move too fast, so they're not too bad. So I'm in our smallest state, Rhode Island, and of the 48 states, Texas is the largest, and here's a Texas Longhorn. So I went to Rhode Island to see a Texas Longhorn. Go figure. I wouldn't be willing to bet if I went to Texas, I would not find a Rhode Island Red, which is a kind of chicken. And this is, again, a sea otter or an otter. I think this is a river otter in Rhode Island. I think they have river. So the difference between sea otters and river sea otters are about 3 or 4 times the size of river otters, but then the sea is considerably larger than the river, so that makes sense. So now we're done with our trip to Providence. Everybody, please fasten your seatbelts. Make sure your seats are in the upright position. Throw tables will stay. We're now going to Copenhagen. So now we're in Copenhagen. Yes, this is a picture I took. This is one of the canals in Copenhagen. This was right around the corner from the hotel we were staying at. I got up early one morning, and well, it wasn't that early. Sunrise was like 7, so it wasn't crack of dawn or anything, but I got up early-ish and got this picture of the thing. So we're ready to go to the zoo. So of course, zoos are great places to learn to count. Remember I told you one of my favorite animals to count is the big cats. So here we have lions. So there's 3, 2, 1. So different groups. So they had the most lions of all. So one thing, if you do get a chance to Copenhagen, I recommend it. It's a fantastic city to go tour. And I would say of all the 4 zoos, the Copenhagen is probably the most world-class one of the 4. Philadelphia has a lot of animals and a lot of good stuff, but the zoo's starting to get a little tired. I feel like they need a little money to sort of spruce it up. And Philadelphia and Providence are about 42 acres each. Copenhagen, Cape May is 80 acres with half the animals, so they have a lot more room. And I forgot how big Copenhagen Zoo is, but it definitely was a very well laid out and very modern, nice looking zoo. So we saw some bears, and there they're playing. So I think that's a mother and a cub, and I don't know what they're exactly playing, but it looks like the mother's mouth is on the cub, and then they kind of wrestle each other. But you could tell it was a playful wrestle, not a let's kill each other wrestle. But I think they do that because it's practice for when they actually do have to kill them wrestling. They kind of know the moves, and then they know to up at a level. So Copenhagen is the only zoo of the 4 that I've been to that actually had panda bears. Panda bears, of course, come from China, and no zoo owns the panda bears. They're lent. China lends panda bears to zoos, but it retains the official ownership of the panda bears. Panda bears tend to be solo bears, so they tend to live alone. And there were 2 panda bears, but they were sort of like in separate enclosures, or there was something between them, so that other than maybe mating season, they weren't actually together. So this is a animal, and I figure, and I'm just saying, look at the horns, or antlers on that animal. And you could tell from the way the animal was moving its head that those were not necessarily the lightest thing in the world. But it just amazed me the way they look like hands. And it looks like there's multiple sets of hands at the top, out front, and how they came out sort of symmetric boggles my mind. They're not perfectly symmetric, but they're, similarly symmetric. And how they did that, I have no idea. Elephants. Now, Copenhagen, Providence had the bare minimum of 3. Copenhagen, I forgot to count, but I think there were 6 or 7 of them, maybe more, including one baby elephant. It was just so adorable seeing the baby elephant. It's like a scaled down version of the big elephants. Well, I mean, that's probably what it is, but, and there it is, just, it's amazing what they can do with their trunk. So we'll leave the elephants now, and we're going to head over to, again, we have animals and primates, and sometimes the primates like to be very friendly with each other. Sometimes they're not. Now this one, I thought I got a nice smile. So you yell, smile, give me a bigger smile. I got a bigger, I don't know if that's a bigger smile or a, shut up, I'm going to come attack you. I don't know what that face was. So there's one. I just look at the ears. I just feel like the ears are so human-like. They almost look like human ears. And the thing, it almost looks like a mask on another animal or something, the way the face is and the eyes are sort of recessed behind that, the face. I mean, this was real. This was the actual animal. There was no mask, but it kind of looked like there was a mask there. And you feel like these animals are talking to each other, and the one on the right is reprimanding and saying, now you know you did wrong, to the other one. And here's a baby getting a ride. And in this zoo, according to the sign, I didn't do the research, but I'm going to believe the sign they put up. And the sign said that typically the animals, the mother feeds them and the father gives them piggyback rides. So now we have some other primates. The one on the left, in my mind, it looks like he's looking at a cell phone. In fact, he's actually studying the onion he's about to eat. So these animals eat onions, but it kind of, if you use your imagination, it could be like looking at a cell phone. So it looks like me looking at my cell phone. And the other one is sitting like, where did I leave my cell phone? So we're in the enclosure now, and it's a fairly big space, and it has the giraffes, the zebras, and these animals. And they're all in the same enclosure, and ostriches. So there's one enclosure with multiple species of animals. At the Philly Zoo, for example, the zebras and the rhinoceroses share an enclosure. Here it was the zebras, the giraffes, and the ostriches sharing. So I looked at these two animals and I felt like they were watching the other animals. So I felt like not only was I getting a show, but these animals were also not only giving us a show, but also watching the other animals out there, almost like they're mesmerized by the activity of the other animals. So here's, again, zebras, and I just trying to get pictures of zebras that aren't just a zebra with stripes. So it looks like, I think this one is nursing. I'm guessing that's what it is. I mean, there was no sign or anything, but again, trying to get it so that, you get the stripes to line up. And then here's two ostriches. One is chasing the other. The one in front looks like it's laughing, haha, you can't catch me. And the one in back is trying really hard to catch him. And you can see the zebras are in the same enclosure. Oops. All right, I missed the last one. It was just a bird. So that was our stroll through the zoo. At this point, if you want to make comments, you can unmute yourself and we can all talk, but thank you for letting me present. I know Eileen is going to say, anybody who wants to present, we'd love to have you do this. And anybody who volunteers and wants help on how to use Zoom, let me know. I'm willing to train or help anybody do a Zoom call and learn how to use it. So feel free to unmute yourself at this point if you wish to pipe up, make comments, say things. Compliments are most welcome. I'll mute you if they're nasty. No, I'm only kidding. So thank you.
Can I talk? Stephen, thank you. Zoom is not my kind of thingy. And I was really concerned about having meetings for the Photographic Society continue. And at the same time, kind of keeping everyone safe. And the whole thing about wearing a mask and were you vaccinated? And, I know that the Plastic Club has opened for exhibits, but an exhibit is different. People are milling around. They're not sitting in a confined space. And so this really gave us the opportunity to see an incredible presentation. I love animals, and I feel like I have just been boop-bopping around at the zoo. So I am incredibly grateful. And again, it's exactly what Stephen said. This may be our method for the next few meetings, at which point, once we're able to all gather together again, we will still be able to offer a Zoom part of our meeting for a lot of our members who are distant or have a difficulty getting down the way Kamak Street has become more restaurant tables than street. So there are just lots of really good things happening, and I'm incredibly grateful to our members for their support, and I love you all. There you go. And you like my timepieces? Because time just keeps ticking by. Anybody else? Come on, guys. Dip, dip, dip.
Hey, everybody. There is a little bit of news I got on email. Studio tours going to be online tomorrow, October 20th, 5 to 8. Let me see if I can find who's doing it. I think it's Philly Studio Tours, if anybody got that notice. Let me find that for you, just a minute.
For people that don't know, Kyle is one of the vice presidents of the Photographic Society. Kyle Payne. And I'm not sure where Morris Klein is. There's Morris. Morris is the other vice president. And my super duper helper today was Adam. She's great. I could not do any of this without Adam. So thank you, Adam.
You're welcome.
So it's the Center for Emerging Visual Artists presents Post Philadelphia Open Studio Tours. I assume it's going to be a Zoom type of thing, but I don't know because they didn't really say. But if you like to, you can register for that online.
I was just going to point out, it's a great show. One thing is sort of an obscure fact that you showed two types of zebras, the narrow stripe and the wide stripe. I don't know if you noticed how much difference there was between them, but the ones at the Copenhagen were obviously the wide stripe and the others were narrow stripes.
I kind of go there for the artistic taking pictures rather than the biology and botany of it. So I appreciate you pointing that out to me. I'm getting a little better at Now I take pictures of the animal and then try to take a picture of the sign. So when I get home, I can read up on what I actually took. But I'm more concentrating on pretty animal pictures than their exact species and things. So I appreciate that because I need to learn more and get better at that part.
I just think you appreciate the patterns differently because the patterns are so fine on the narrow stripes and the wide stripes are sort of crude. And sort of can appreciate the beauty of the narrow stripes versus the wide stripes, I think anyway.
So what's your favorite zoo that you've been to so far, Stephen?
I would say the Copenhagen, but of course that's one I'm not going to go to anytime soon again. I told you what
So-
that trip cost me. You'd be sitting there like, we spent a week in Copenhagen. Again, mostly because my daughter lives there and it's been like almost 2 years since we've seen her. So we wanted to spend time with her.
Okay, for those who don't get to go to Copenhagen, what's your favorite American zoo so far?
I like Philly because it's close and it's easy to get to. And at this point, I'm going to give you some if you go to the Philly Zoo, a couple of suggestions, and I love going to Philly Zoo. Get there when it opens because it's less crowded. Because one of the problems you have taking pictures at any zoo, if it's crowded, it's harder to get close to the animals or get pictures without people in the way. The second thing is if you get there and it looks like it's going to be a crowded day, the Philly Zoo is designed to take you in a counterclockwise way through the zoo. So you tend to go in, then you go to the small mammal, then you go to the big cats, you go to the large primates. But as soon as you go in, if you make a left turn, you can go around the zoo clockwise and you hit the macaws, the flamingos, and then you hit the African plains, which is where the zebras and the hippos and the rhinoceroses are, and the zebras and all that. And you go around the other way, and you can get some of those animal shots without people in the way, because everybody, especially people who've never been there before, sort of follow the logical path that the zoo sort of sets out for you, going counterclockwise. So that's just one tip. The other tip is, if you're a member, which I strongly recommend, there's special member days where they let you in an hour earlier than the regular people. Two advantages of going then is the animals are a little more active because it's earlier in the morning, and I think they just got fed. And the other one is it's not as crowded. So those are my two, Philly tips. The other one obviously is if you can't do those, go in the middle of the week and not a beautiful, nice weekend day in the summer because again, when it gets crowded, it's very hard. Another thing about the Philly Zoo is they have the overhead pass. It's probably great for the animals. It's great for people watching. It sucks taking pictures because you're basically taking pictures of a tube and you might actually see the animal in the tube. It's very hard to get the animal separated from the tube in a picture because the camera is not as forgiving as your eye is. And then the Cape May Zoo, if you like outdoor places, the Cape May Zoo is designed so it's got a wooden walkway that's elevated maybe 10 feet off the ground. And you're walking along that and the animals are on ground level. So you're separated by height most places, though there are cages in certain places like primates because they can go over larger things, or the lions as we saw. But that's a beautiful, if you like being in the outdoors, you feel like you're in a park with animals on the sides of you. But they're all great zoos. They're all worth it.
Is there a zoo that you want to eventually visit?
The Bronx Zoo.
I was wondering about that if you made it up there.
No, I haven't made it to the Bronx Zoo yet. I'd like to, but I just haven't made it to the Bronx Zoo yet. And then after having done this presentation, I'm going to start nagging my wife. I think there's a zoo in Norristown, the Elmwood Zoo. I need to get to that one. And I need to start doing a little more research on what zoos are around in the area or what's worth a road trip to go to a zoo. And
Which
just for the
animal have
record,
you?
not once if I want to take any animals home with me.
Oh, not yet.
Not yet.
Is there any animals that you found have more expressions when you photograph them than any others?
Um, uh, no, I think it's just a matter of being patient and just waiting for them to be in the right place. And you're not going to get every, like some days I can get lions and tigers and some days I can't. Some days I can get the gorillas, some days I can't. So you also have to plan if you're going to do anything serious like this, like a presentation like this, multiple trips to the zoo because the way the animals are one day is going to be different another day. And a zoom, powerful zoom. Okay. All right, well, I see any other people want to talk, feel free. Just trying to think if I'm looking at the chat and I don't think I missed anything that needs to be asked. Again, the Philly Zoo, if you go in an off time, does allow tripods if you want to use a tripod. I've used them. It's a plus and a minus. If the animals aren't moving too much, a tripod works, but if the animals are moving all over the place, tripod's going to kill you. So I shoot in auto ISO. So I set my minimum shutter speed. I set an aperture and let the ISO go up fairly high to try to catch the animals. And even then, sometimes there's not enough light and you just have to hope that you're going to get a picture.
I suppose most of the zoos that you visited are pretty open with their photo policies. Has there been any difference between the zoos that you found in terms of that?
None. They
None?
all are happy letting you take pictures. In fact, I was at the Cape May Zoo I told you about a week ago, most recently, and I'm walking around and I'm holding a D850 with an 80 to 400 lens. So we're talking a fairly massive camera gear, and people are saying, "Wow, that's a big camera! Wow, you must get amazing pictures with that." And you see, like, what am I supposed to say to that? I just said thank you. It's amazing how much shot. The only bad thing about Zoom meetings is you tend to be shyer and, because at a regular meeting, you can actually talk to people one-on-one, but feel free to, at this point, if you want to unmute yourself and chat, it's okay. Otherwise, I'm probably going to end soon.
Yeah, why don't you turn off the recording and we can chat for a little bit afterwards?
All right, I'm going to turn off the recording.